AskReddit by Minecraft Player 48. Teachers of Reddit, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? I was the kid. Physics, 11th grade. The day prior to this day, my neighbor passed away and her son was a friend of mine and also in this class. Terribly long story, but it was a suicide by hanging and I was the one who found her. I had nightmares all night and skipped the first half of school the next day. When my physics teacher saw me later, she asked where I was that morning. Before I could explain, she said, "That friend was looking for you and concerned. He seemed more worried than he should have been and was a little upset about you not being there." The guy's mom died, but he still went to class and didn't tell anyone, but was worried about me. I couldn't tell her what had happened at that point, so I just said I overslept. I had a student whose father had died and had not done any homework or prep for the geography class. From what I heard, the teacher scolded him for not doing so, but the student didn't want to say anything, presumably sensitive issue, so his best friend shouted at the teacher, "Don't you have any shame? His father died last night," and the teacher said, "I don't care." There was an audible gasp and I was in the next room. Needless to say, that teacher is no longer employed here. My sophomore year in high school, Dad died. I missed a week of school. When I got back, I tried to turn in my English assignment that was due the week I was out. Teacher wouldn't accept it, said it was late. I told her my father had just died and that's why I was out. She said, "I know, but it's still late." Went home, told my mother. The next day, the principal, my guidance counselor and the superintendent had all contacted my teacher to rip her a new one. She had to accept my assignment. She was salty about that the rest of the year. My auto teacher let me practice removing and adding the tires on his vehicle. The next morning it was about 20 minutes into first period and no sign of him. He comes running into the classroom out of breath and his hair is all messed up. He points at me and says, "What is a torque wrench used for?" I respond with, "I don't know." He says, "I know you don't know." Turns out one of his tires came off while driving down the highway. Honesty, that's on him. You're an idiot if you don't check behind the student on something like that. She had to take her sister to school and drive her mom to rehab. She was always late to class because her mom just wanted to sleep in. Problem was, if the mom was late or did not go, she would have violated her probation and gone to prison. I never marked her late. If she missed anything important, she could come in at lunch or after school to make it up. You sound like an amazing teacher. Thanks for all that you do. Student here. I headed into school early to get some studying done in the library before my night class. I was one exit away when I was caught in a 3-car accident. Most of the expressway afterwards was gridlock with only one lane left open. I did eventually make it into my lab class 15 minutes late, with a few scrapes and bruises. My professor's reaction was simply, "Oh, that was you." Was he the one who hit you? Not a student, but one of my teaching assistants when I ran a preschool in West Philly. Sorry I missed yesterday, my friend shot my mom. Naturally, I'm a little speechless. Oh no, it's okay. He was aiming for someone else. When I was a manager at a pizza place, one of the employees had the same excuse and attitude, except he was the one who got shot. He lived in North Philly though. "It's cool." He said, "My bad." Well, okay then. I was one of about 20 kids who were late to school. We showed up at the school office as a group, and when questioned why we were late, we said the school bus blew up. They questioned, so the engine blew up. The kids know, the whole bus, in flames. It blew up. There was much conference between the teachers, all of them thinking we embellished the story. Next thing you know, one of the admin staff has the news website open. Very obvious image of an entire bus on fire with a bunch of kids in our school uniform standing in front of it. Our late slip for class reads, "School bus blew up." If that happened, I would walk home. Former student here. Sorry, boss, My stepdad tried to kill us last night and I had to deal with the cops. Professor just looked at me for a moment and said, "Dude, do you want to go grab a drink and talk about this after class?" Man, my English prof was a bro when I was in college. All good now? Told me he got pulled over by the cops for wobbly driving on his bike and they thought he was drunk. Turned out he was just dodging all the slugs on the street. Good man, watching out for the sluggies. They like to traverse the walkway in front of my house at night, so I always have to shine a flashlight so I don't step on them. A guy in my college class missed class one day. The next day he came in with his eye covered up and medical paperwork in hand. Apparently he got pecked in the eye by a chicken. What is it with fucking chickens today? School sporting event. Kid on our team was late because someone stole his windshield wipers and it was snowing out. Kept having to pull over to the side of the road and wipe off his windshield. Wow, that's a real bastard that's wiped his wipers on a snowy day. Not teacher, but pupil. I was in a car crash on my way to school. About 5 cars involved because some jerk decided to overtake us since we slowed down coming to a turn. So a trip to the hospital to get checked, and then school 3 hours late. I had small cuts all over my face from glass flying everywhere and had a really sore shoulder, but my teachers wouldn't believe me until police showed up because they forgot to get a statement from me. Apparently some of the other involved people died. AMD the jerk got 8 years in prison. Hey Mr. Teacher, see I have my face all cut up because of glass from a car crash. I hope you are okay with that. Now you're lying, bro. You did that yourself to get an excuse. After 9/11, my small town high school received bomb threats every week for 2 months, and they decided to make us attend school on a Saturday. Myself and about 5 others showed up for our classes, and every teacher said something like, "I can't wait for the excuses on Monday." Most of the excuses were something along the lines of family plans or whatnot, but one kid was made read his dad's note aloud to the class because our first period teacher thought it was hilarious. In the most down south accent you can imagine, it went something like, "My son ain't too smart, but he knows you ain't supposed to get punished for someone else being a dumbass. Bought him a 6-pack, so he was drunk. Y'all can FCK off." I wish we had smartphones to record back then so I could share it. Is this Southeast Texas? I'm not the teacher, but we were told that he had a paramedic student who on their way to write their final exam rolled their car into a creek, picked up whatever books they had out of their car and ran the rest of the way to class. Obviously got there late and in tears. You better believe they had a different exam date. I missed my SAT once because the school bus got stuck in the ice. It was a residential school, so they didn't take snow days. I had a 6-year-old turn up late to her lesson and blurt out, "Sorry I was late. I had to color in a bunny." Seems fair. Can't blame her. Coloring the bunny is an important job after all. In my hometown, if you walked into anywhere late and said the phrase "sorry, grain train," you were never challenged. It was extremely common for 50+ carriage trains to run through the middle of town. Where I am, we have a similar problem with farmers transporting huge loads on the tiny 1.5 lane roads round here. In their defense, they will pull in when a tailback forms and let people pass, but quite often we're talking a tractor with 2 trailers loaded to cars wide with hay or whatever it is. Those kinds of large laybys are few and far between. MTV paid me $50 to fill my backpack with cement and carry it around for the day. I accepted that excuse. Student later regretted it, as a replacement backpack and college textbooks far exceeded $50. But he got his moment of fame and I didn't penalize him for his tutty. Got to live a little. Edit. Someone found a newspaper article on this. Turns out it was $200. He earned $100 for the first day and $100 when he returned the next day. I remembered $50, but it was 19 years ago. So I was right to believe him. He still lost all his stuff, thanks cement, and I remember him telling me it wasn't worth it. And edit typo. What kind of idiot doesn't take his books out first? Taught a group of seniors first period. It was towards the end of the year. I had a class of around 30 and only 5 were there when the bell rang. Halfway through class the rest of them show up. They went out to Cracker Barrel for breakfast and brought me some back. All was forgiven. Bear on the backyard. No access gate. Animal control had to trunk it from the room and drag it through the house. Made the news. Got to retake the test I missed after sending her the news article. Still have access to the article? I kinda wanna see it too. I'm pink. A fair-skinned student, age 10, went with a friend to the holy festival at a nearby Hindu temple where she was covered with red powder and dyed bright red from head to toe. Her mother, another teacher at the school, had made her sit 4 hours in the bathtub to soak it off, but even after another round of early morning shower scrubbing, she arrived at school a pleasant shade of pink. Technically, she wasn't late, but she stayed in her mother's classroom until the bell rang. Teachers' kids basically live in a ruleless society or an extremely strict one. I was a student. My neighbor had a really social goat, and she figured out how to escape her pen in order to come over and hang out. She escaped and followed me to the bus stop, and when the bus came, she tried to follow me onto it. I couldn't actually get on the bus without her being right behind me, so I had to get off, bring her home, and call my dad to bring me to school. Edit, spelling. My neighbor had a really social goat is the best thing I've read today, thank you, lol. I had a chemistry professor show up about 15 minutes late just when people were about to leave. He shows up and explains that he was just in a car accident, his car had been in a rollover and he still showed up. He said he was okay. He drove a Volvo. Had a sociology prof in college who was never late for anything. One day, we showed up for class and he wasn't there. After 5 minutes or so, we are reading the handbook to find out what level of professor he was and found that he was an associate professor and entitled to 10 minutes wait. A few seconds before his time expired, a voice came from under his desk saying today we are going to discuss withdrawn personalities. He conducted the whole class from under his desk. My best friend and I used to roller skate to school and one day we both forgot to put our shoes in our backpacks. So we skated to the vice principal's office and got to skip first period to go home for shoes. We stopped at Taco Bell on the way back for breakfast, because we figured we were already excused. I had a teacher in high school that would tell us if we're gonna be late to pick up coffee because 2 minutes late is the same as 15. UK, a student couldn't submit an assignment on time as the Wi-Fi was down on the megabus. Edit, cheers for all the love and I'll be sure to tell the student his megabus mishap is relatable across the globe. Standard, to be honest. We had an exam in my class and the teacher got a message from a student saying that he was going to be late because his car had a flat tire. The student was known to party. The teacher didn't think it could be true, so as a joke the teacher asked him to bring the tire back. He brought the flat tire back in the middle of the exam. Needless to say, the professor didn't expect that. That student had been partying. Drives to school, takes off tire, punctures it, and bobs your Auntie Mary. Not me, but one of my good friends. She went to the Royal Military College of Canada, where they wear their uniforms and there are often tourists visiting the campus. Apparently, it was completely normal to be waylaid by tourists looking to have their photos taken with students in uniform that all they had to say when they walked in late was tourists and the professors would let it slide. She always wondered how many family photos she was actually in over her time spent there. This is so unbelievably Canadian to me. Not a teacher but a friend said his house blew away. Apparently, tornado. May have been my house and took about a week off from school to help clean up my house. Not a teacher, but I was training a new hire at a job and the guy came in 45 minutes late stating he got halfway to work and realized he didn't have shoes on. It was winter and like 15 degrees outside. I did that in high school once. Mom got so mad at me. This was me as a student. My parents thought I get President's Day off so they didn't wake me up. Just out of curiosity, how old were you at the time? A kid's apartment burned down overnight. He was a little late, but still came. Well, being at school would be better than on the streets. Flock of wild turkeys in the road. Not always school, but this happened more than once in my life. For those of you who have never found yourselves in this situation, there is no way out of it. Wild turkeys will move when they damn well decide to do so, and only then. Never been in the situation, but I've met some wild turkeys, they truly don't care. A kid missed my first period class one morning, but was in school later that day. When I asked him why he hadn't arrived in time for my course, he said his cow was birthing its calf that morning, so he'd picked being in the barn over English. Made sense to me. His essays weren't going to win any ribbons at the county fair, but his calf could. I was late to AP Bio because my goats had kids that morning. I feel like that should have counted for my grade. Edit. Thanks for the kind words and generous awards. My bio teacher was actually a neighbor and had been by my farm before, so I of course didn't get in any trouble. It's not a farming community, though very suburban, so I was the only one in the school that could have used the excuse. I had a teacher who showed up about halfway through the class. Apparently her car had slid, intense snowstorm the night before, and she had walked the last mile or so. That's dedication to students. My goats got out. Are you the neighbor of Ushoppy33? I am a teacher, but this happened when I was a student. Does it count? In high school a kid came late to history class. He was a joker, so when someone asked him where he had been, he goes, "I was kidnapped." Everyone laughed, until he goes, "No really." Turns out two guys kidnapped him and tossed him into the back of the minivan he was using for his morning paper route. They drove him around while they robbed something. I can't remember what happens after. I think they just drove the van somewhere and got away. He showed up after that? Deleted. Damn you, that's when you close the door and go back to the bed. When I was in college, my psych professor told us that the only excuse for being late was a funeral procession. Any other reason, you wouldn't be allowed to come in. A few weeks into the semester, I was headed from one building to another, which involved crossing the main road. Lo and behold, there was one very long funeral procession going by. I got a short video of it as proof, then stood on the sidewalk to let it go by. Unfortunately, the procession made me 5 minutes late to class. I knocked on the door, and the professor came over to start to tell me off. I showed her the video. Well, I'll be damned, see Monday in. And then you could just save that video for any future professors like that. My car got hit by lightning. It did, in the school parking lot. Her tires were melted to the pavement. She had to go out and deal with a tow truck, call her parents, etc. It was pretty dramatic. Jesus. My car was hit by lightning twice and it never melted my tires. That feels like some fantastical threat from a mythical god. Obligatory, not a teacher, but I'm an admin at a music school. I had a mom frantically call me and let me know her daughter would probably be late or miss their guitar lesson in a couple hours cause she couldn't find the kid. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I will let her teacher know. Got another call about an hour later from the same mom. She found her kid, but apparently the daughter went to a friend's house and decided to dye her hair green. They lived pretty closely, so I did let them know they could still come in for their lesson. Mom said she would call me back and let me know in a minute or two. Never called back. Her daughter showed up for her lesson about 5 minutes late with this bright green coiffure. I gotta admit it looked rad as fuck, but also kind of a confusing thing to be an audience to the build up. Edit. Thank you for the award. It's my first one. D. Why was her hair green? I need to know. Not a teacher, but a kid walked into my class one day and literally just said sorry I'm late. I didn't want to be here. He wasn't wrong I suppose. As an educator, I'd give him credit for honesty. My best friend at the time was doing a carer's job in preparation to later do nursing. He lived a train ride away at the time, but it was okay because work was 5 minutes from the train station. Someone's jumped in front of his train as it was approaching the station. Everyone's stuck on the train whilst it's established if the person can be saved and if it's a crime scene on the tracks. Hours later he gets into work a little cheesed off but apologizes and promptly finds out it was one of the patients who had made him late for work. It was a semi-secure hospital for adults with dementia. Edit. I missed the teacher's part, oops. I sent my manager a pic of my car on fire on the side of the highway letting him know I wouldn't make it in. Deleted. After that first paragraph I had some really wild ideas about what you would be teaching to your organ students. My best story ever. I taught in a hardcore inner city school. My student comes in at 10:30. I was like, dude, where were you? Oh, my bus was late. Yeah, no. Why would your bus be 3 hours late? Well miss, there was a drive-by shooting. OMG, are you okay? Someone shot up the bus. No ma'am, a kid shot a gun out of the bus. We got pulled over. The cops had to search everyone. The kid with the gun was literally the last kid to be searched. Truth story, you can't make this shit up. When you wanna be hardcore and do a drive-by, but you're not old enough to drive, you gotta improvise. Kindergarten teacher. One of my students is just a very heavy sleeper. They often arrive late and miss our first class. After nap time, they will remain asleep no matter what we do. Music, tilting the bed slightly, asking them questions, even gently standing them up, nothing. Most children can't help a cheeky grin or something when they don't want to wake up, but we get absolutely no response from this little one until they naturally wakes up. Nothing medical, just sleeps like a rock. I think it's great that your kindergarten still has nap time. My child is in kindergarten and, although I can request he be sent to the preschool classroom for a nap, they don't nap anymore. He's so tired by the time he gets home. I was a student. I was walking to school and 2 of our cats were following me. I had to round them up and take them home. My dad wrote me a note for my lateness, which included the phrase "Animal show and tell day." Edit. Oh, thanks for all the awards. Here are pictures. https://imgur.com/a/wk4cppb closed bracket of the cats. The 2 that followed me were the orange one sitting on the dishwasher door and the tabby underneath it. Better picture of her included. Fun fact, all but one cat, the tabby in the middle, had the same mother. Oh man, I remember sprinting down the street to make the bus as a kid and suddenly realizing that the strange clacking sound was my dog, happily racing along behind me. Had to run all the way back with him in that agonizing sort of half crouch when you don't dare let go of the collar. Bus driver was kind enough to wait, though. Had a college algebra teacher show up late or no show almost every class. The other students thought it was hilarious because if there's no teacher for 15 minutes you can leave. So we had no class a huge chunk of the semester and it really aggravated me. This is pray out a band. I was not understanding the math at all and the girl trying to tutor me didn't speak English well and my grade for the first time ever in my life was suffering. And I'm paying for the class. One day, teacher showed up about 20 minutes late and I'm one of the few people who didn't take off early and he angry walks in, slams his briefcase on the desk and says I apologize for this semester. I have cancer. I'm dying and then left. 8. I don't know what happened to him tbh. Not me but in my class. This was in college. Student turned in work late after not showing up for 2 classes. 2 classes amounted to a full week, so it was noticeable. Professor looked at him and said, I hope somebody died for you to be this late. Does my dad count? Honestly, I've always heard you can hear a pin drop and never really thought anything of it, but yeah, you could hear a fucking pin cut through the air after that. A way too friendly taxi driver asked me and my sister why we were so quiet. Did anyone die? Yes, we're just on the way back from our dad's funeral. He didn't say a word for the rest of the drive. Not school, but I got robbed at gunpoint and my car stolen the previous night and was talking to cops detectives until the early hours of the morning. But being the dedicated corporate slave I am, I showed up to work the next day, albeit an hour or so late. Even in public accounting they understood and even said, you know, this is clearly an appropriate reason to not come into work, right? Looking back, I probably should have taken that day off. If anything, this made my co-workers think I'm some crazy person for just brushing the whole incident off as no big deal and coming into work. Your brain was probably running on fumes at that point. I can understand not thinking it through and showing up at work. A little off topic, but in 8th grade a friend of mine turned in a homework late because her dog literally ate her homework. She even brought a note from her parents. I turned in mine after my dog tore it up. I put the shreds in a Ziploc bag and you could see the slobber gathering in the bottom of the bag, in addition to the paw prints on the paper from where he held it down, and I had a note from my parents. Not a teacher, but a kid came into class a little beat up and almost an hour late. He accidentally drove off a cliff while texting and his phone was broken, so he walked to the closest place where he could get some help. He was sent to the hospital almost immediately, and he was okay except for a concussion and bruising.